Jameela Jamil played Tejani Al-Jamil for 4 seasons of The Good Place, which ended earlier this year. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby, here with Jameela. And first off, this was the final season of The Good Place, and I'm curious what kind of just emotions you were feeling to have this, which is your first acting job, coming to an end.
Yeah, well, it was a mixed bag of emotions. I come from England where we always end a series too soon. We have a reputation for it. I don't know if it's cowardice or it's protection of the story, making sure that we never, ever, ever fall off kilter. So I had always known, especially because I know Mike, that it was never going to run that long. But it was very sad to say goodbye to this story, to this incredibly important show, not just to us, but I think to our culture, dare I say. And it was really hard to know that I wouldn't be looking at Ted Danson 16 hours a day every summer. So that was really upsetting. But I'm really happy with where we ended it. I feel very proud. I think we just buttoned the whole thing up perfectly, which is so hard to do with a high concept show. And I have seen nothing but a wonderful response from our fans, which makes me really happy. The last thing you want to do is have people love something so much and then have it just fall off a cliff because we fork up the ending.
Right. Well, this season we really see Tejani kind of coming to accept what she is best at, which is, having these kinds of social connections and throwing parties and just how she can also use that skill in kind of a positive way to actually make a difference in the world, and also to just, also to just love herself and not be so dependent on everyone else's validation, which was nice to see, that journey.
Saying goodbye to her really upset me. And I think, we knew a year before we shot the season that was going to be our final one. So I feel very grateful for the fact that we knew to soak up every moment and not be complacent actors who just, would complain about the heat or how tired we were. No one said a word because we were just trying to just absorb everything and really take each other in and take in the story and make sure that we connected with the writers, because knowing the whole time, it's sort of brutal knowing that this is the final time you're ever going to do this, but it also made us really appreciate it. And the minute that Mike Schur said that's a series wrap actually on Jameela Jamil, I don't ever cry, and I definitely don't cry in public, and I sobbed like a tiny, tiny little baby. Because it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'd never acted before, and he plucked me from complete obscurity over here and gave me the chance to play this woman who I hated so much at the beginning of this series and have grown to just fall in love with her and learn from her. And I feel very grateful for the fan love of Tejani. And how many pornographic images I've been sent about her and Eleanor.
Sure, yeah.
Into it.
A lot of people ship them, which I love.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I want episode 2. I want version 218. Give us 218.
Yeah. Well, in the final episode, we do see that Tejani wants to become an architect like Michael. Yes. And I had a couple of questions about that, actually. One is, what do you think it was that kind of led her to that point? And then also the other one is just, how did you first react when you just found out that this would be how Tejani's journey would end?
I was thrilled to find out that she's the only one who survives, really, as of the humans, because, it opens a door to a spin-off. I'm kidding. I don't think there's going to be a spin-off. I loved it. I thought it was such a dignified and wonderful ending. But also, I think her reasoning for going there, I think it was the fact that she was really ready to actually help rather than just performatively help. She really wanted to change people's lives. And Christ, if ever that was relevant, it's right now, as we're watching all these actors do these performative things, trying to show they care rather than actually actionable movement in pursuit of progress. And so Tejani was the epitome of that. Tejani would have sung the Imagine song. Do you know what I mean? It's just... it's who she was. And that's also, by the way, that I don't mean that to be cruel, it's just funny and classically tone deaf, and she was the queen of tone deaf. So I think I think it meant that she was genuinely trying to put change into the world. And I also think she was a hyper overachiever. And I think that was a hangover still from the way that she was raised. She wanted to achieve the unachievable. No one had ever done that before. And she wanted to break every single record, tick off thousands of things on her list of things to achieve. And that was the ultimate end goal of practically playing God. So it makes perfect sense that she would get her power suit on and try and, you know, help control part of the universe. It's very Tejani. Also, I think she did it knowing that loads of famous people would go through the doors.
That's true.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think she would have organized the Imagine video.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I blame Tejani for that video.
That's fair.
I do.
Yeah.
She planted that seed.
Well, I think I probably already know the answer to this question because you mentioned Ted Danson earlier, but I was going to ask if there is a dynamic that you're going to miss the most, or maybe you already missed the most, just between Tejani and another character.
I really miss the character dynamic. I miss the most between Tejani and Michael, because I feel like he saw something of himself in her, and from the very beginning it always felt like she was something of his protege, you know, and that she, and hilariously, even though she had no authority to, I love the way that she always treated herself as if she was Michael's equal in a way that no one else did. And so there was a very father-daughter bond between the two of them. I felt like Michael and Eleanor were best friends, but I felt like there was a very father-daughter bond between Michael and Tejani. I'm going to miss him so much. His energy when you are acting opposite him, his generosity, and the way that every single take is different, and so you have something to play with every single time. And he's so reassuring. He gives you great notes, and in between the takes, he's truly one of the funniest men alive, the funniest and kindest men alive. I'm completely obsessed with him. I think I'm in love with him. I think I'm in love with Mary. I just want to join their family. But truly, I could not have asked for a better teacher, because, you know, Mike wouldn't let me get acting lessons when we started, because he just said, whatever you're doing now, I don't want you to overthink. So he was just keep, it was like, and I think this probably isn't a compliment. He was like, you are Tejani right now. You've got her. So it was coming to me way too naturally. And he didn't want me to do acting lessons. And so I chose to just study and steal from Ted Danson. So a lot of my facial expressions, everything I learned, I was just copying the master. And it was like going to the greatest drama school on earth. I truly feel like I could handle anything. Because Tejani went through every emotion in the book. I mean, she had every different type of emotional arc, and emotion and passive aggression and all the different terrible feelings. But also I got to learn from him. And so I'll never forget that. And I will never, ever, ever, ever have a greater co-star than Ted Danson. So I'm retiring.
Well, not a bad drama actor to have for your first role.
Truly, unbelievable. I'm so lucky.
Yeah. Well, I've asked this of a few of your co-stars over the past few years, just being part of a show like The Good Place that deals with these kinds of big philosophical discussions and morality and mortality and just the way that you choose to live your life. How much has that weaved into just what you're thinking about in your own life, just on a day-to-day basis?
It has massively. I mean, look, I think all of us already aligned with The Good Place. We already had similar values and morals as Mike Scher, and I think that's why he chose us. None of us were like any of the demons. But I do think, for me personally, it's taught me to not care so much about what other people think. Thank God, considering where I took my career and became and furthered my activism into the mainstream. So it would have been very bad if I'd cared as much as Tejani. So watching how much that tortured her for the rest of her life taught me very early on that I need to let go of that, otherwise I will be the same. But the show, one of the things that I'm proudest of is being a part of a show that puts out the messaging that is most important in this moment in time, which is that you take people from very different backgrounds, from very different upbringings, who are very, very different people, and they put their differences aside in order to work together to get to a better place. If ever there was a more potent message for what we need to do now in such a divisive moment, The Good Place was spelling it out all along. And I'm just saying, I don't think it's a coincidence The Good Place finishes, and then the world falls apart. Pandemic.
Yep.
I mean, everything that's happened. I'm not saying explicitly that Mike Schur is to blame, but I also am.
Well, there you go. We'll leave it at that. But since we are Gold Derby, we love talking awards. And when we spoke last year, The Good Place was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Comedy Series. But in between then and now, the show was also nominated at the Emmys for Best Comedy Series, and you got to go to the Emmys.
Yes.
I mean, what did it mean for you and the cast and the crew to get that kind of recognition from the industry?
It meant the world, and we'd always wanted that because we felt so passionate. We feel so passionately about this show. We love this show so much. We cry over this show all the time. And that final table read I've got a video of it, and it's just one of the saddest things I've ever seen. We were thrilled to be acknowledged by the industry and to get to go there. And 4 of us have never done any of this before. So for Kristen and Ted, it's a little bit different, but for us to be able to go there and be considered peers amongst our absolute heroes, we were all just grabbing each other and freaking out as to who was before or in front of us on the red carpet. So it meant the world, truly. And some people say awards don't mean anything, but I think it's an amazing nod of recognition for all the work that you put in. And actors do really work very hard on the craft of what we're putting out into the world, and especially a show that meant so much to us. None of us phoned it in. We all genuinely gave our whole heart because our fans are just so devoted that we would feel like we were letting them down. So going to the Emmys was unbelievably cool. I got to meet loads of people that I love, and I was just thrilled to be there.
Well, one last Good Place question I wanted to ask you is, I talked to your co-star Manny Jacinto a few weeks ago, and I asked him for his favorite Jason Mendoza quote from the series. The show being over now, do you have a favorite Tejani name drop?
Oh God, a famous Tejani name drop. There are so many. For ages, it was my good friend Taylor, my best friend Taylor. Well, I think one of my favorite ones, which was just such an irritating thing for her to say, was, oh no, God, I don't even think I said it. Hang on, wait, let me just get this right, because I think Eleanor said it about me, but it was one of my favorite things where Eleanor said, apparently she's Taylor Swift's best friend, but Taylor Swift isn't her best friend, which I think is such a funny thing to say. It's so petty and childish, and it means Tejani would have said that to her. One of my favorite Tejani moments of the entire show was when in season 2, I believe it was, when she finds out she's gotten into the Good Place, like everyone else is so thrilled, and she just goes, I accept, which I just think is such an arrogant and ridiculous, wild answer when you find out that you've gotten into heaven. That's so classic of just what a pompous bench that woman is. It made me laugh so many times I could barely get that take. There was just something so stupid about those 2 words. How dare she? Truly.
The audacity.
Truly.
My personal favorite is the Barbara Streisand one. Which is
my God, remind me of that one.
I wrote this down because I wanted to get it right. I haven't had a pet since Barbara Streisand gave me one of her cloned Siamese cats and it killed itself. Just
God, the writers
perfection.
They really gave me my Ben Affleck quotes. I don't think there was a single celebrity I didn't send for.
Yeah.
They cut out like Leonardo DiCaprio ones. There are all kinds of ones that you never got to see that were just so wonderful, but it was such a delight. It was so funny. It's also so bizarre to meet all the people now that Tejani has name dropped and feel embarrassed and guilty for having spoken about them on the show.
Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears for a bit to Legendary.
Cool.
You are a judge on Legendary, the
I
HBO Max voguing competition. You mentioned in another interview kind of being a window in, for outsiders for this community. Can you explain just what that experience was like for you?
It was incredible. And I've loved this community for a really long time, and I've been going to balls in New York for many years, and I have always been unable to understand why such a glorious, fabulous, talented community wasn't being put on mainstream television. It just didn't make any sense to me. Obviously, I understand bigotry and marginalized people and how they're treated in this industry, but I mean, everything comes from ballroom. All of our dance comes from there, our vernacular, music is so inspired by ballroom, fashion is so inspired by ballroom. And so it's amazing to see all these sort of watered down versions of them appear in the mainstream, but the people who originated that culture are hidden away. And so to have the chance to bring that to the mainstream, to show the world where everything we love actually comes from and give the money and the recognition to the actual community just felt very exciting. And, you know, I was learning along the way as we show throughout the industry, throughout the show, Megan Thee Stallion and I, and Law, we are all learning along the way, and we all come from different backgrounds, and we all have large followings that don't know anything about ballroom. And so I think they wanted to make sure that the show was inclusive, in that it was a way in for those who also didn't understand all of the vernacular, all of the terminology, all of the, you know, it's not like it's not like America's Got Talent. It's a very specific community. It's a very specific art form. You really have to understand what you're looking at. And so via us asking, you get to learn, because Leomi is teaching us. And so I understand that people thought it was a peculiar decision, but so many people have reached out to me to say that they're so glad to see, to learn alongside myself and Megan Thee Stallion. So that's great.
Yeah, and it's also just such a fun show. It's just so infectious.
Show.
Yeah.
It's an amazing show. And also, I've never seen such talented contestants. You know, normally for a ball, you have a month maybe to prepare. They were pulling those performances with those visuals, that hair, that makeup, those routines together in 4 days sometimes. That's how quickly we were shooting. It's just to be able to remember that choreography and to bring that level of presentation and perfection. They're just so talented, and I'm so excited for the world to get to know not just the contestants, but the whole community. Also, Deshaun Wesley, what a god, not yes. Not a person, a god.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, we don't have a lot of time left, but you're also very involved in I Weigh, which is your podcast and YouTube channel. You are an outspoken activist about body issues and this whole kind of social media influencer culture. But when you look broadly at all of this culture, do you think that we are starting to trend positive? Are we getting worse? Is it more of the same? I'm just curious if you think there's been any kind of progress on that front.
I think there's been progress. I noticed that there are less detox and diet laxative teas being sold by very famous women. Not saying it's entirely down to me, but no, I think we're making progress. I think the fact that we're being able to have these conversations in the mainstream, and we have stars who represent more realistic physiques rather than the sort of standard straight white male gaze of what women should look like. I'm seeing more diversity. I think racial diversity is a big part of that, because that's a big difference in the way that women's bodies look. And so I think we are moving in the right direction. There's still so much more to do, and this pandemic has not been very reassuring, if I'm honest, because this has been an opportunity where people are on their phones more than ever, and this is a time where the industry can't freak us out about our beach bodies. So instead they're trying to freak us out about our COVID-19 survival bodies, as if you're supposed to come out of this with abs, with a perfect cellulite-free body, thinner than ever. And this is being treated not as a survival experiment where your mental health is being tested to the extreme, being locked in your house for months and months and months on end, either by yourself or with people who you can't cope with at that level for that long. They're taking those people and making them think that their job is to come out of this looking like a supermodel. It's so exploitative, it's so disgusting, and it's working. And the apps are being sold every 15 seconds on social media. So I feel deeply concerned in this current climate about what's happening with our eating disorder culture in this industry, but I will not be silent. So I will do my best to keep trying to raise awareness and point out how dangerous these apps are, these fad diets. And I have work coming up in the next year where I'm extensively investigating all of these fad diets and diet culture that will hopefully help shed more light on how dangerous and dirty and disgusting the diet and detox industry is.
An expose. I'm intrigued. Yes. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Jameela, for talking to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. The Good Place and Legendary are 2 shows that have, I think, in their own little ways, made history and made a real mark on the world. And, you know, with The Good Place having a high concept comedy that also is wrapped in dick and fart jokes, and to have it mean so much to so many people and the way it traveled so far has just blown me away. I don't know how I can ever top something like this. And with Legendary making history to have a first ever dance competition for a community who have been so ignored and deliberately silenced and gaslit and stolen from, just feels so incredible. So I really appreciate I appreciate you for shedding light on these shows that I think are more than just entertainment.
Amen. Yeah.
I appreciate you.
And
thank you.
Yeah. And for those of you watching, hit like and subscribe for more interviews just like this, and head to goldderby.com to start making your Emmy predictions. Predict The Good Place.
Yay.